welcome to all our listeners to the next episode of the Equiverse Voices. Equiverse, a universe where gender equity is the norm. Here we explore various pathways to restore gender equity in our current universe. In today's episode, we are diving into a topic that resonates with many of us: restoring personal well being. This is especially relevant for women who often have to shoulder all the care responsibilities in addition to home management and their full time jobs if they're working outside the home. Restoring personal well being is critical for us to build a more sustainable and an equitable world. A world that often pulls us in different directions. How do we reclaim our sense of well being, our sense of balance? We are fortunate to have with us two exceptional individuals who bring to us their unique perspectives to this conversation. First, let me introduce Dr. Geeta Kumar, a passionate well-being advocate and the founder of Pragati Partners in Progress. Geeta's passion about diversity and inclusion has made her dedicate much of her time in promoting holistic well-being. She's a mentor to many in the field of spirituality and personal growth. Welcome, Geeta, to this episode. Alongside her, we have Nikita Singla, an international trade and inclusion specialist, a civil engineer by education, and a dedicated yoga instructor. Nikita's journey and passion for gender equity and personal well being make her a perfect moderator for today's discussion. A warm welcome to you, Nikita. Without further ado, let's just dive into this enriching conversation between Nikita and Geeta about personal well being. Over to you, Nikita.
Welcome everyone to the Equiverse podcast. I am Nikita Singla, your host for today. I'm an international trade specialist by profession, a civil engineer by education, a solo backpacker by choice, and a yoga instructor by training, which is why this discussion is of special interest to me: restoring personal well being. But the big question is, what does well being really mean? How do you start taking those small steps to enhance your own well being? How do you really sustain a happier world? To discuss this, I have the pleasure of welcoming Geeta Kumar, a big well being advocate and practitioner, and someone I look up to when it comes to spirituality and well being. Geeta and I discuss this so often. It's one of our usual conversations over chai and sometimes over vegan lunches. Welcome to this episode, Geeta.
Thank you so much, Nikita. It's always such a pleasure to be with you, especially on this theme that we're so passionate about together. Like you, Nikita, I would also like to give a flavor of who I am to our viewers. Curiosity makes me come alive, and it's really what has defined all my life choices and, of course, the consequences. I have a karmic connection with dogs, the one at home and over desert on my streets. I enjoy reading and stimulating conversations such as the one we are having now is extremely important, and it's like a source of fuel for me. I'm a firm believer in following a routine and a structured daily life, which automatically translate into personal well-being, being a way of life for me. Professionally, my engagements span across leadership, diversity, equity, inclusion, sustainability, and well-being.
Interesting. Thank you, Geeta, for this quick introduction and realizing it's not one of our usual chai conversation and we are in front of a camera. So let's jump straight into the topic. Geeta, when we talk about well-being, we have discussed this so often. A lot of people associate this with a healthy body and with a little extension lately to a healthy mind. As the famous saying goes, mens sana in corpore sano, healthy mind in a healthy body. But how do you see well-being?
Actually, Nikita, fundamentally, what are all human beings seeking? It is happiness, right? And all our action choices, knowingly or unknowingly, seem to be around that. So, the first principle around well being is self acceptance that creates satisfaction and happiness within oneself. It's also about managing positive relationships with friends, family, and others. Uh, the ability to cope with normal stresses of life is an important aspect of how we feel about life, about ourselves, a sense of purpose or meaning in life, with an ability to make meaningful contribution not just to ourselves but towards the larger community. Well, that means that well-being is not really, one or the other. It's an all-encompassing phenomena that impacts every individual's physical, mental, emotional, financial. And let me take this chance to explain this through a very simple framework. It's quite popular and it's called the Well-Being Wheel of Life. So let me start by explaining there are 8 dimensions that cover all aspects of our lives. And let's start with the first one, which is the physical health. So when we look at physical health, we mean, what are we eating, what are we taking in, what are the kind of exercise our body is getting, the quality of sleep, etc. The second one being mental health, a healthy mindset. How are we in terms of our emotional and our levels of feeling? How are the resilience around our emotions? Relationships. How are we connected to others? How others connect with us? The fourth being recreation. This is a very important aspect. The fun aspect. Where do we get our downtime? What are our elements which give us aliveness and joy? Finances again is a very important aspect of well-being. How much are we getting, are we providing for ourselves, or is the system providing enough for ourselves? What are our earnings? How are we investing? What are we doing for the long term well-being for ourselves? And particularly for professionals, I think career is very, very integral to the entire well-being, because 50% more actually of any day is going towards our careers. So the satisfaction at work, a sense of fulfillment, looking at ourselves individually, where are we with respect to ourselves, how much do we know each other, how much is available to us about ourselves, understanding ourselves better and going higher into those levels. And the last one, the eighth dimension, which is so important but sometimes gets completely overlooked, which is our spaces. What is the energy, what is the ambience around us, home, work settings, living environment. If your home, for instance, my home a few years ago, especially during COVID, everything was almost in shambles. The plumbing was, the house was cluttered, and and it did actually impact how I felt about everything around me, how I thought, how did I experience the world. And similarly at the workplace also, suppose your workstation is around a water cooler where people are just coming and going and there's so much chatter all the time. It is going to impact how you think, how you behave, how you act. Or it could be even a toilet. It's definitely so. These are small things. And the beauty of it is all these 8 dimensions, they're not mutually exclusive, they are actually interdependent. And therefore when we speak about well-being, it requires integrated, a systematic approach for wholesome living. And there is this whole thing of, and any one of these are not aligned or integrated, it impacts how we feel, how we behave, and how we experience the world. Especially currently, when our lives are seem so complex, we're so unsure sometimes. There's such big decisions that we have to take. Things overwhelm us. That lack of confidence. Where do you begin? Where do you start? This, wheel of life is a great tool that helps anyone, kind of harmonize our life, prioritize correctly, set goals that inspire us to move forward. So, having said that, I want to now introduce something else, Nikita, if you may allow me. What is it that drives our well-being? Yeah.
Right.
And if you actually look at it, just like a Maslow's pillar, the hierarchy and the triangulated, the bottommost is the physical health, sleep, activity, recovery, nutrition. Then how do we take care of our emotional feelings, our mental cognitive aspects. And all of this obviously is leading us to somewhere. We may be aware of a direction, very clear purpose, or some directional, idea of where we are heading. And the underpinning of all this, the substratum, seems to be the mental health. And this is an aspect which actually defines our overall well being. The story and the journey is actually from here, and thankfully, mental health conversations have picked up momentum post COVID. But yet, there is so much shame, there is so much stigma, and therefore the silence around one of the most important elements of our well being.
Yeah, I so
So,
agree with you, Geeta. Yeah, I think it's so crucial to acknowledge the very importance of prioritizing mental health, as you were telling us, just prioritizing our well-being for everyone. But Geeta, I feel it's more so for women, because we are fighting a continuous battle trying to juggle home and work. And there are statistics to prove this. Of course, on an average, women globally spend about 3 times as many hours on unpaid domestic and care work as men. We go on maternity leaves. It's not just about those 9 months or childbirth. A lot of women experience postpartum depression. I mean, every single month we go through all these hormonal changes during our monthly cycle, right? But but Geeta, I was remembering our discussion, this, that every society really glorifies this 10-hand Devi avatar of womanhood, which sort of imprisons them even more into socially constructed expectations, which is why we end up multitasking, we experience burnout and stress. So I think the journey towards self-care is even more critical for women, but it can be overwhelming, and that's something we need to deal with. And for me, one thing that has worked is that, when you look at different aspects of well being, when you were telling us about the wheel of life, I was thinking what I have done is look at all these different aspects of well being with the physical lens, with the physical health lens. If we get a physical ailment, we leave everything there, and our sole priority is to treat it. I mean, every one of us will have multiple examples to say where we break a bone, we know which doctor to go to, right? We get a strep throat, we know which physician we want to go to. But what happens when we are feeling low? We are dealing with loss of a family member, loss of a friend, loss of a job, loss of any kind. Where do we go then? That's where the a vacuum occurs, and we need to start seeking help. That's key to everything. Geeta, you may remember when I lost my mother 3 years back, all of a
yeah.
sudden we spoke about it. Within 20 days I had signed up with a grief therapist. And I think just knowing someone is out there to help makes such a big difference in your life, because that gives you this emotional strength and resilience that you can navigate these systemic and structural challenges in life, and yet sustain and maintain a career momentum, which is so important, again, for women. So I want to come back to you, Geeta, and ask, how has this journey been for you? Would you agree that actively seeking help really helps us?
You are spot on, Nikita. And in fact, I call this how it helped when I sought help. That's the category that we are talking about. Uh, also to bring out, we are all on a health spectrum, whether it is physical or whether it's mental. There are good days and there are bad days. In fact, within a day itself, we have good and not so good moments, and it's across physical, mental, emotional. With respect to physical health, it seems to get more normalized and we do end up taking help. Unfortunately, that's not the case for our mental health. Firstly, the very fact that you're not feeling good mentally and emotionally is not something that one speaks about or shares. Obviously, then what do? We wish it away, or you bury it deeper and deeper, and it becomes bigger and bigger, the issue. I want to definitely mention here that all mental health issues have physical, cognitive, emotional, and behavioral impacts. For example, let's take common mental health issues like stress, anxiety, depressions. These actually manifest first as physical symptoms. It could be through headaches or migraines. It is acidity, irritable bowel syndrome, unexplained aches and pains. Typically, so we, if there's one of these, let's say a headache is manifesting, what do? Or we have fever, we pop a pill. If it persists over a couple of days, we go to a doctor. They prescribe some meds. If it still persists, we try and dig deeper and go for detailed diagnostic tests and so often. But very often, we actually overlook the root cause. We hope and sometimes pray that they go away with just those pill popping, or that diagnostics will, and you end up paying so much more money there. Actually, what would probably help is working through that underlying mental health issue that could be actually the root cause of all these symptoms. If you look at, if I as I explained, the emotional, what could be the emotional symptoms that one would experience when one is under any of these mental challenges, as simple as anxiety or depression. It's actually the irritability, the impatience, unexpected bursts of anger, feeling edgy, it could also manifest in the way we are cognitively and mentally, indecisiveness, confusion, worrying, thinking, that every day the worst case scenario, that's where the mind is, or blank mind, completely stuck. It could be behavioral symptoms such as, avoiding social engagements, avoiding because it causing distress. Normal everyday engagements kind of cause anxiety, and you avoid them. It could be irregular sleep patterns, excessive eating, or no eating. It could be excessive dependency on substance use, smoking, drinking. And I think I explained some of the physical symptoms. It could also be this whole, short breath, dry mouth. Or it could be, unexplained aches and pains. So the crux of it is that if we don't acknowledge these, as actually some things that is causing, because of some emotional turmoil and some in unease, it causes dysfunctionality to our everyday life. And that not just impacts the individual, it impacts the entire ecosystem, whether be it at the workplace, be it at home, be it for family, be it for friends. And the fear of being judged as not good enough, that shame, that guilt of asking for help and support are the very things that actually are required, for us to restore our well-being, particularly for women professionals. And that seems to get, completely not acknowledged. So I think the first important aspect, when we look at ourselves, when we look at mental health, when we look at our own well-being, is accepting that as much as physical health, mental health is an important aspect. We need to reset and restore based on that entire wheel of well-being. The second aspect I think is so important that you brought out is this asking for help and support. It could be anyone, it could be friends, it could be family, it could be therapists, it could be the employee assistance program, EAPs that organization run. And that's very important. The only way that will help move this needle towards equitable and healthier outcomes. So, if you look at now, when you talked about women's mental health and women's challenge, and I can't agree more, this whole reproductive life cycle of women is such an important aspect, and it runs parallelly to our, most important milestones in our career, in our age. And look at menstruation or childbirth, postpartum that you talked about, menopause. These are all very, very vulnerable stages for women, and they are all, women do struggle with it. There is there's a helplessness because it's an hormonal imbalance. You can't really do much about it, but it has serious impact on women. It could be unexplained mood swings, it could be depression, panic, indecisiveness, and workplaces seldom acknowledge, leave alone address it. This is an alarming fact, Nikita, no doubt. The biology and physiology that has long been denied at workplaces and in society, where the emphasis is primarily on performance and productivity, and that too, economic and measurable stuff. And what is that impact? It means that women shut themselves down and their needs for their bodies, and it obviously leads to pain, exhaustion, stress, impacts their career trajectory directly, be it pay, be it career opportunities, performance appraisals, growth path, and If you look at it statistically, WHO says that 7.5% of patients who suffer from severe mental health, nearly half of them are adult females. If you look at, slice it age wise, the most important primary age, that's what they say, the peak, 61.6% women in the age group of 35 to 30, 25 to 34 struggle with it. Depressive disorders, as compared to men who have 29.3%, 41.9% disorders are accounted by women. So, and as you said, there are so many multiple demands, expectations straddling all this, creating this work life balance that people talk about is one of the main causes for women experiencing mental health issues and not actually getting help around it, which now brings me to an important aspect. I am very personally very uncomfortable with this work life balance, and I think I'd like to look at it more in terms of work life integration. For that,
Right.
moderation and prioritizing, setting boundaries, this is a great start. So this is from me.
I
But what do you
agree.
think about that, Nikita?
I agree, Geeta. I think, I mean, the most important thing we should learn is setting boundaries, because it's not just good for us, but I think it's also so much, it does so much good to the people around us, because when we are clear about our boundaries, people understand us so much better, right? And more importantly, we know what we are okay with and are not okay with, so you adjust your behavior, your priorities accordingly. Geeta, I remember when I started my career in the early years, I received this advice more than once, how, I should not wrap up things by 4 p.m. and in fact schedule my emails to go off in the middle of the night so that my managers know I'm working hard. I mean, just imagine. And for me, it was actually the reverse, because on days and projects when I even had to do late night sometimes, I would still send an email after 9 a.m. just to set the expectations right. So, I think it's about valuing balance very deeply in every aspect. And I agree with you. I also deliberately do not use the term work life balance, because for me, it's balance in every sphere. And, work and life are not two separate things that you need to balance. Like, work is a subset of life, it's more about work life integration. And when I began leading teams, I always told my team that you should not send emails or messages after 7 p.m. unless it's an emergency. And so, this is how you exercise your boundaries and limits consciously. And you also send a message to others that these boundaries are important for you, because it helps you safeguard your own time, your own energy, your own purpose. And I think this is especially for women, Geeta, because we have to so quickly change our hats and transition from one role into another, let's say when we are leaving office and coming home. So you have to quickly transition from one role to another. And as I'm saying this, I remember Indra Nui's interview actually many years back, when she said after becoming CEO of PepsiCo, the first thing when she went back home, she was expecting all this huge, congratulations and a very celebratory environment. But she was actually asked to get milk or something after she reached home. And
Mm.
I don't see anything wrong with that. It's actually about transitioning from one hat to another with a lot of grit and grace, and not letting any one role overwhelm who you are as a being. And that sort of connects at a spiritual level also, because it's about prioritizing your soul, your journey, realizing how our entire life is actually a transition from one to the next. And that's how we should see our different roles also. It's about, in these different roles, wearing these different hats, how do we serve ourselves and others the best? I mean, well, it's a topic for full another conversation if we get into
I am.
spirituality. But women need a constant reminder that you can only pour water from a glass when you have water in it. So you can only serve others when your tank is full, right? So we need to focus so much on fueling ourselves first. And with this, Geeta, how about we share simple hacks to fuel ourselves better? Let's say five
Hmm.
hacks between the two of us.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. Go for it. So, are you starting, or what is it? How do you want to do this?
So let me start with you, Geeta. What is
Oh,
something that
okay.
you practice religiously to fuel yourself? So let's have number one hack from you.
So very often, to be very honest, I have a lot on my plate on a daily basis, and there are pockets and moments when I do feel extremely overwhelmed. And I've discovered this hack, which is I pause. Pause as in PAUSE. What it means is that I mindfully short circuit that overwhelming feeling. So it could be a simple thing. It could be like moving my location or doing that four box into four breathing exercise, or a very simple hack, which is 5 4 3 2 1. And I'm going to share that, which is in wherever location that I am. There are five things immediately that I can pick up by seeing five things, hearing four sounds, three things that I can touch which are around me, two smells that I can inhale, and one item that I could taste. This immediately gets my mind from that flight fright mode, and I'm able to, the mind just gathers itself, and I'm able to figure out what's the best thing, and it centers me. So that's from me. Now let me ask you, what is I know you keep experimenting and new and every time we speak you're up to something or the other. So what's the latest, madam?
Well, I must say I love this 5 4 3 2 1. This is the first time I'm hearing it, and I'm going to start trying it. But Geeta, one thing that I have started doing is practicing more mindfulness. This myth around multitasking that we were discussing, I have stopped multitasking. When I'm doing laundry, I'm just doing laundry. I don't need to listen to a podcast at 1.5x or 2x speed to make my laundry productive. I don't want to do that. When I go for a walk, I just enjoy being with the nature. I don't need to listen to music that time. I mean, lately, actually, I've stopped taking my phone to my sleeping room because I'm actively working on digital detox. So I think it's really about connecting with yourself and not being in this rush to be productive all the time.
I can agree with you so much. This whole thing that you talked about, this myth of multitasking actually does not, and the other myth I have is this productivity. Everything seems needs to be measurable. Even I go through that thing of guilt, and just having time for yourself, uh, taking a good spa, or just washing your hair, or just sitting and soaking in the sun, or just not doing anything, nothingness, without feeling guilty. I think it's taken me a long time to discover it, accept it, and own it for myself. But I think it's a great feeling. So there is this side that I do. I treat myself with doing nothing, and
So your number
that's,
three hack is doing nothing.
yeah, actually, yes. True. What's
You know,
okay? So then let's look at yours. What is the fourth one that you are? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, when you were saying, when you were actually giving these examples and talking about doing nothing, I was getting reminded of this. I think it was a Taj advertisement where they are sitting in a shikara in Kashmir and saying, "Is bar hum kuch na karne ka riyaz karenge." So,
Yes, yes,
practicing
I remember that.
nothingness. And I
I
think this is
remember
so
that.
important that you need to actually practice to not do anything which seems nothing at the outset, but it's actually so much inside because it's refueling you.
And
And
it
Geeta,
requires
number
discipline, huh? It requires discipline. It doesn't come naturally.
absolutely.
The guilt will just keep hijacking you. You need to keep pulling yourself back. It's okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying, Nikita.
And my number four would be Geeta. I think to put it very crudely, it's about really having this no nonsense approach towards everything in life. And I
Mhm.
remember actually one of our lunch conversations where you explained me about ahar, vihar, and vichar. And I think that's what I want to
Yeah,
bring here.
yeah.
Ahar is really what you eat. There's so much stress on eating organic food, eating the right food these days. But eating is not just what you eat through your mouth, right? It's also what you eat through your eyes. What do you see? What do you watch? What do you hear? So it's really about being conscious. What are you taking inside you through all your different senses? So looking at that, the second is vihar. What kind of people do you engage with? Exercising choice in that. you want to be around those who feed your soul and definitely not the ones who eat your soul. So you really ask yourself this question, if I'm invited to a happy hour, do I really want to be there? Ask yourself this question and then make a choice, exercise that choice. And the third one is vichar, which is absolutely my favorite these days. It's about what you think, right? Which is why this meditation practices and chanting really helps you sort of slow down your system. And there's so much joy in slowing down, if I can say, right?
Yeah, I'm loving it. It's savory. And I love what you said, Nikita, about the choice. So when we choose what we do for ourselves, I think we're doing, something right for ourselves. But not choosing is also a choice, no? For not doing what is right by us. So yeah, I just love that choice. And everyone has a choice. And we choose to choose choice or no
Absolutely.
choice. And I love that. Yeah, true.
So last one from you, Geeta.
Okay, the last one. Okay, so very recently, I was reading a book and I found this, 333 rules for prioritizing and decision making. And I started putting it into use and it really works for me. So I thought I'd share it with the viewers here. The 3 3 rule goes like this: ask yourself, how important will a priority be 3 days from now, or 3 months from now, or 3 years from now? Let me give you an example. So, you have long work hours, you have priorities, you want to look after your health, physical health. There are certain things that you need to, put together. And yet, quite often, I've seen, especially, and I'm not being gender, but it happens mostly, the responsibility of the food on the table happens to be still with working women. Rather than looking at serving hot meal every day by cooked by yourself, it could be a possibility, and it is a good investment and return on investment to take a help of a cook. Now this is a low impact, so people, I mean, having a cook versus you cooking, it has no real consequences 3 days, 3 months, 3 years from now. But that time that gets released has huge opportunities for you to spend a quality time with your family. It could be with your child. It could be on some very interesting upskilling opportunity that will get your career going. So I have worked with it, and I think this 333 rule is a fantastic tool for us to kind of, just prioritize what is important.
Wow, interesting. I'm going to remember this as well. Well, with this, I think we could go on forever, Geeta, but
Yeah,
looking
I
at the
know.
time, thank you so much. I think it was a fascinating discussion to have with you. Thank you for sharing all the wellness wisdom with us. I mean, for me, it touched inside so deep down, like every time. And I hope it did for our listeners too. And, I really hope, Geeta, from this conversation, all I want is if our listeners are able to make at least, take a note of at least one action that they can start doing differently: self care, feeding your soul, setting your boundaries right, or maybe try one of the 5 4 3 2 1 or 3 3 3 rules, right?
Or doing mindful laundry, or doing one thing at a time. I think these are great hacks, I feel. Yeah. And it's always such a pleasure, Nikita, to converse with you. Every such conversation actually for me helps me reset and restore my well being. So I'm going feeling very good and positive after this conversation.
Thank you,
Thank
Geeta.
you.
And with
Thank you.
this, hoping for a world where we are all healthy, mind, body, and soul. And that's really the base for creating an equiverse. And we keep playing our part. Thank you, viewers. Thank you, Talentnomics. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Geeta and Nikita, for this wonderful conversation and for showing us the pathway to building and restoring personal well being. And thank you, audience, for joining us for this insightful episode of the Equiverse Voices. As always, our speakers have shown us a path towards shaping the Equiverse. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on gender equity in our upcoming episodes. Let's take actions as individuals, as professionals, and as family members towards building this equiverse where every person, regardless of their gender, can thrive and succeed. Do collaborate with us to build this new world. We would love to hear from you, your suggestions, your ideas, and your reactions to these conversations. Thank you.